The needed Dee Clay pulled into Dust Creek before dawn, the engine humming low as if trying not to wake the desert. The gas station loomed out of the chill like a half-forgotten relic. Rusted metal, buzzing fluorescence, a faded diner sign blinking against the pale pink sky. She eased the 18-wheeler into the gravel lot, tires crunching like slow applause on the empty earth. On the back of her cab, just beneath the grimy rear window, a peeling sticker whispered, "What didn't kill me still runs from me." It had been there long enough to lose its shine, but not its meaning. Dee shifted into park and paused. In the side mirror, 3 still shapes sat in silence behind her, Ghost's ears twitching, Duchess half asleep but alert beneath it, and Ranger with his chin on his paws, eyes open. She didn't speak, just nodded once. They didn't move. The cold bit through her sleeves as she stepped down. Her boots hit the gravel with clean, solid weight. She didn't rush, didn't glance around, just walked toward the diner, with the deliberate pace of someone who'd seen too much to care about first impressions. Inside, steam rolled off the diner window like breath against glass. The only movement came from a man behind the counter, thin, graying, wiping down mugs with the kind of caution usually reserved for explosives. He looked up as she entered, shoulders tensing. Then he saw her face, calm, unreadable, and relaxed a little. "Coffee?" he asked. "Black," she said. Her voice was even, almost tired. "If it's not burnt." The man gave a brittle laugh. "Can't promise miracles, but it's hot." She slid onto a stool and rested her forearms on the counter. The warmth of the mug when it came was welcome, but her eyes remained on the glass, scanning the lot. 5 motorcycles had arrived while she wasn't looking, lined up like teeth in the mouth of the station. Their riders hadn't come in yet, but they would. Sure enough, the bell over the door jingled like a dare. Boots, leather, laughter that tried too hard. 5 men. Dee didn't turn. "Now that's a surprise," one of them muttered behind her. "A lady trucker. That your rig out there, sweetheart? Or you just borrowing it from your man?" They posted up in a loose semicircle near the coffee machine, loud enough to own the air but not quite close enough to warrant a reaction. Dee took a slow sip. "She got dogs in there too," another chuckled. "Saw one blink at me. What's she got 'em for, huh? Company? Or is she scared of the big bad world?" Buzz Langley made himself known last. He was older than the others, thicker through the shoulders, the kind who spoke in declarations instead of jokes. "You know what they say," he said, voice low and confident. "The bigger the truck, the bigger the need to pretend." The men laughed, the kind of laugh that feeds off discomfort. Still, Dee didn't move. Not until Buzz took one step too close. A boot scraped the tile. That was the line. She put her cup down. A pause. Then a low whistle. Soft, almost a hum, but clear. Behind the windshield of the cab, 3 shadows stirred. First, Ghost, head rising with mechanical calm. Then Ranger, unfolding himself like something built for endurance. Finally, Duchess, the oldest, slowest, and last to move, but first to lead. They dropped from the cab like sentinels. No growls, no barking, just presence. Buzz blinked. "Oh, she whistles, and the mutts come. How sweet." "They're not pets," she said, still not facing him. "They're patients with teeth." Buzz laughed again, louder now, pushing past the invisible wall of uncertainty. He stepped closer and spat, just near enough for it to land by the toe of her boot. Dee looked down, then up. Her face didn't change, but something in the air did. "You're too loud to be dangerous." The silence that followed was taut as cable. Even the diner lights seemed to dim. Behind her, Lester had stopped pretending to wipe anything and just stood frozen, his hand gripping a chipped mug. Buzz hesitated, something unreadable in his jaw. Then Duchess moved. One measured step. Nothing threatening, no snarl, no crouch, just positioning, between Dee and Buzz. The biker flinched, unintended. A half step back. He covered it with a scoff, but the sound rang thin. Dee turned, slow and easy, walked back toward the door, her coat brushing the edge of the counter, her boots deliberate. Outside, the dogs waited. Lester exhaled only once she was gone, and even then, it came out crooked. He looked at the space where she'd stood and shook his head like he still wasn't sure if what he'd seen had really happened. The clip wasn't even clear. Just a silhouette, 3 dogs, and a biker backing away, but it spread like a warning. Inside the cab, the road slipped by in long, flat stretches of early morning asphalt. Frost clung to the edges of the windshield where the defroster hadn't reached, and the sun hung low and yellow in the rear view. Dee drove in silence, but the CB radio crackled, filling the stillness with bits of conversation from drivers who had never met her, but who now spoke her name. "That woman with the dogs? Heard she used to train them for the military." Didn't even flinch, just whistled. Them mutts moved like clockwork. She didn't raise a hand. "That biker damn near tripped over himself backing up." Dee said nothing. Her right hand adjusted the volume slightly down. She didn't mind the talk. What bothered her was how fast it was moving. Faster than her truck, faster than the truth. She glanced at the dashboard. A photograph was taped near the heater vent. Zuri, smiling with a pup in her arms, wearing her campus sweatshirt and those wire-rimmed glasses she never remembered to clean. The corners of the photo had curled with heat and time, but it stayed there, right above the dash clock. Her phone buzzed on the seat. "Morning, Ma," came Zuri's voice when Dee picked up. "Or should I say, viral star?" Dee grunted. "You saw it?" "Everyone saw it. Even my roommate's uncle texted me. Said you look like someone out of a war movie. Except, quieter." Dee's fingers tapped once on the steering wheel. "It's already a damn fiction," Zuri laughed. A warm rasp that sounded like home. "You do realize people are saying you trained those dogs to respond to silent cues? They're not wrong." "Ma," her tone turned playful. "Ghost once jumped into the dishwasher during fireworks, you remember that?" Dee didn't laugh, but she let the quiet stretch. "He didn't jump," she finally said. "He calculated. Took the lowest enclosed option." Zuri made a sound between a laugh and a sigh. "You always make them sound like soldiers." "They're not," Dee replied. "They're family that follow orders." "Well, whatever they are, you scared the hell out of some folks, and apparently impressed a few dozen million." Dee didn't answer. She pulled a rig into a fuel station on the edge of Vaughn. Just a single pump under a corrugated awning and a soda machine that blinked, "Out of order," in half-lit letters. She slid the phone back into its holder and stepped out, her breath curling in the cold. Elsewhere, far from Vaughn, but not far enough, Buzz Langley watched the same blurry clip on a cracked iPad. The bar was nearly empty, just 2 men slouched at the pool table and a bartender rinsing glasses without much interest. Eli sat across from him, nursing a warm beer and looking sideways. "They're saying she didn't even move," Buzz muttered. "That we backed down from a look, from a damn whistle." Eli shifted uncomfortably. "Well, that dog, Duchess, I think, they didn't growl or nothing, just stood there. It was weird." Buzz turned the screen toward him, jabbing a thick finger at the frozen frame. "She made us look like cowards." "No," Eli offered, voice small. "She made you look like you weren't in control." Buzz didn't speak. His eyes narrowed. The light from the video flickered against the rage curling just beneath his skin. "No cameras next time," he said after a moment. "And no dogs standing still." Back at the station, Dee replaced the fuel nozzle and stepped toward the store for a receipt. The wind had picked up, sharp, dry. It tugged at her coat and pressed whispers through the seams. That's when she saw it. A glint, subtle, reflected in the window of her cab. A bike mirror. Snake decal curling around the stem, same as Dust Creek. Only this time, it was closer. And it wasn't watching from the edge of the lot. It was parked, just 3 spaces down. They didn't shout this time, just stood behind her in silence. 6 boots, 1 intention. The rest stop smelled like dust and tired asphalt. It was 9:30 at night, but the desert never truly cooled, only pressed the heat low into the concrete. 1 street lamp buzzed overhead, its flicker throwing long shadows across the lot. A vending machine clanked to itself in the corner, unattended and humming like a worn-out choir. Dee stood at the far end of the lot, sipping lukewarm water from a bottle she hadn't meant to finish. Her cab sat idling 20 feet away, the interior just visible through the cracked side window. Ghost's silhouette stayed motionless in the front seat. A breeze kicked up, carrying the scent of oil and burnt rubber. She didn't turn around. 3 steps behind her, Buzz and Eli stood flanked by 2 others, both larger, younger, their denim vests stitched with patches and arrogance. No laughter this time. No crude remarks. Just presence. Thick, loaded, and quiet. Earlier that week, a trucker had said something through the CB that stuck with her. Pride doesn't forget when it gets bruised. It just waits for you to stop looking. Buzz's voice came low. No cameras this time. Just us. You. And those mutts. Dee didn't answer. She looked at the sky. Flat black, the stars hiding behind dust and high cloud. She let out a single, clipped whistle. Barely a note. Inside the truck, Ghost moved first. Then, Ranger. Then, Duchess. The door hadn't even fully creaked open when they stepped down, not rushed, not showy, just precise. Like water finding the lowest point. They fanned out into a triangle. Ghost on the right, Duchess on the left, Ranger steady at her heel. They said nothing. Their silence was the sharpest sound in the lot. One of the new bikers shifted his weight. His boots scraped pavement. He lunged. Ghost moved faster. No bark. No snarl. Just a swift pivot and a firm shoulder press, knocking the man off balance. He stumbled, caught himself. His hand went to his belt, but froze there. Buzz stepped forward then, and reached. His hand latched onto Dee's arm, fingers digging into the sleeve near her elbow. She didn't flinch. You just crossed it, she said, low and even. Another whistle, short, second, sharper. Duchess moved like wind. She hit the lunging biker square in the torso, her body a wave of muscle and intention. He went down hard, breath knocked out, curses lost under the slap of pavement. No blood, just humiliation. From the edge of the lot, a door clicked open. A figure emerged, older, heavy around the waist, wearing a trooper's badge on a worn leather belt. He didn't draw his weapon, just watched. Buzz stood frozen, hands still hovering near Dee's sleeve, but now unsure of what it wanted. Trooper Klein didn't say a word, just observed, eyes flicking from dog to biker to woman and back again. One of the young bikers took a step backward, his boot heels scuffing hard against gravel. His hand went to his pocket, then stopped. The dogs didn't move. They didn't need to. Ranger stood like a statue. Ghost's eyes never left the center of Buzz's chest. Duchess still hovered near the downed man, chest heaving but unmoved. Trooper Klein finally spoke, his voice cutting through the tension like a line drawn in cement. Should I call animal control? Dee turned slightly, just enough to meet his eyes across the flickering light. Might want to call a doctor instead. Someone had keyed Dee's truck overnight. The words read, "Go back where you came from." But they spelled "where" wrong. She found it at dawn, after the wind had blown dust into the cracks of her windows, and a dry gust had carved half-moons in the sand around her tires. The insult ran jagged across the chrome panel near the fuel tank, letters deep and angry, the final stroke still catching morning light like a wound. Ghost was the one who'd noticed it first, his nose pressed to the edge of the step, then a sharp whimper. When Dee crouched beside him, she saw the sliver of glass sticking just beneath his front pad. It wasn't deep, but it bled. Her fingers worked with steadiness she didn't feel. She pulled a kit from the side compartment and cleaned the wound, pressing gauze with hands that remembered worse than this. Ghost didn't whine again, just leaned his head lightly against her knee. You always were the quiet one, she murmured. Above them, the sun rose through the edges of a desert dust storm, muted, orange, unreal. The air tasted like grit and memory. Dee stood and looked at the damage again. The words weren't clever, but they were loud, and ugly, and meant to bruise. She thought of Zuri, her voice on the phone weeks ago, asking the kind of question a daughter hopes has a right answer. Do they ever stop? Dee had replied then the only way she could. They stop when they run out of nerve. She wasn't sure that was true anymore. Later that morning, the sheriff's office sat like a weathered boot heel at the edge of Route 285. Sheriff Louise Frank stepped out the moment Dee pulled in. Tall, hair graying at the temples, eyes like smooth stone. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Heard it happened up at the way station, she said, arms crossed. Dee nodded. They left a message. I imagine you didn't call to report the spelling. Dee allowed the corner of her mouth to twitch. Didn't seem urgent. They stood for a moment in the weak sun, the hum of old fluorescent lights buzzing behind the office door. You want extra patrol on that stretch? Franks asked. I can post someone just off the ridge. Non-uniform, if it helps. Dee shook her head. They're not chasing me. They're chasing what they think I represent. Franks leaned back on her heels. Yeah, people do that when they're scared of mirrors. Dee met her eyes. I'm not here to teach them to like the reflection. Franks gave a short, impressed grunt. No, I didn't think you were. When she left the station, Dee saw him. Buzz, seated on a bike across the road like he owned the pavement. Helmet off, elbows on his knees. Staring. He didn't wave, didn't smirk wide. Just sat there, mouth a tight line, daring her to look longer. Dee didn't stop the truck, didn't give him the pause he wanted. But her grip on the wheel tightened, her knuckles pale beneath sun-scorched skin. Back at the way station, she stood alone beside the truck, one hand wrapped in a rag, slowly wiping the slur away. The dogs sat close, Ranger behind her left foot, Duchess lying sphinx-like near the front tire, Ghost beside the step. His bandaged paw rested lightly against the gravel. She worked in silence. The scrawl came off in smears, but it came off. Her breathing slowed as the last of the grime faded under her hand. They want a war, she muttered, but I only offer mirrors. No one answered. But the weight in the air agreed. The dogs didn't bark. They didn't shift. They just stayed. Dee climbed back into the cab, slid the gear into drive, and rolled out onto the highway. The road stretched ahead in a ribbon of sun-stained gray. She didn't look in the mirrors. Not until 5 minutes later, when the sound of her own engine was no longer alone. A line of motorcycles followed behind her. No headlights, no noise, just intention. 7 bikes, 1 woman, 3 dogs, and nowhere left to steer but forward. The canyon curve loomed like a blade. Narrow shoulders, crumbling guardrails. Fog clung low to the road, hissing as it slid off cooling asphalt. Dee slowed her rig to a halt, engine idling in the hush just before dawn. She'd seen the bikes a quarter-mile back. Now they were ahead, forming a wall across the pull-off. Buzz sat center, his arms draped over the handlebars like a king waiting for tribute. Eli stood beside him, helmet off, eyes flicking sideways, never forward. The other 5, faces unfamiliar but postures all too known, spread out to his flanks. Dee tapped the hazard lights. They blinked slowly, rhythmically, like a pulse, trying to stay steady. She slid the door open. No rush, just deliberate weight against gravel as her boots met the ground. She didn't speak. She knelt beside each dog in turn. A whisper to Ghost, softer than a breath. A glance for Ranger, steady and firm. A touch behind Duchess's ears. Permission and command in one. They moved as one organism, honed and silent. Ghost peeled left, low and tight. Ranger circled wide to the right, eyes scanning behind. Duchess stayed forward, front line, unblinking. From his bike, Buzz sneered. No one's filming now, he called. Time to see if them mutts bleed. Dee said nothing. The dogs didn't growl. That was what unnerved them. Buzz dismounted, crowbar in hand, boots crunching loud across broken rock. You think they're weapons, he spat, but you're the one using them to hide. Dee stepped forward. The air shifted. The first biker lunged. Ghost met him like a gate slamming shut. No teeth, no bark, just mass and motion. The biker hit the pavement with a surprised grunt, limbs tangling in his own weight. The second and third came faster. Too fast. Ranger surged in a blur. His shoulder collided with a chest, and the man folded mid-charge. Duchess leapt. Not high, not wild. Controlled. Her front paws met the biker's collarbone, knocking him flat. She stood over him, unblinking, unmoving, as if daring breath itself to return before she allowed it. Eli flinched and took 2 steps back. His eyes were wide. He didn't look at Buzz. He didn't look at Dee. He looked at the edge of the road, at the sky, at nothing. And then he turned and ran, boots skidding on gravel, breath hitching. Buzz didn't notice. He was alone now. But pride makes poor company. He roared and raised the crowbar, knuckles white. That's when Dee spoke. Loud, clear, final. Don't. The word cut the canyon. Buzz froze. His arm hovered, every muscle caught between motion and shame. From the ridge above, sirens began to wail, distant, climbing, impossibly timed. Buzz turned toward the sound, and saw it, a figure by the shed, half hidden, phone raised, recording. Dee's voice lowered again, almost gentle. You wanted to be seen. Now you will be. By the time the sun rose over Amarillo, a video titled Woman with the Dogs had crossed 6 state lines. The truck plaza on the outskirts of town stirred gently to life. Flags moved in the dry wind with the kind of lazy dignity that didn't beg for attention. Somewhere behind the fuel pumps, a country song mumbled about justice on 4 paws, the twang stretching across the air like morning fog. Dee pulled into a shaded spot near the diner. Her rig hummed down to stillness. The windshield bore the faint dust prints of another long haul, but her eyes stayed clear, focused ahead. On the dashboard, just below Zuri's curled photo, a new sticker clung to the plastic. Respect doesn't bark, it just arrives. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and lemon cleaner. A young clerk behind the counter looked up and froze for half a second, recognition dawning. It's on the house, he said, sliding a cup toward her. Thanks for, you know. Dee took the coffee without ceremony. I know. At the far booth, 2 truckers spoke in low tones, nodding toward the window where her rig sat like a resting beast. One of them tapped his phone, showing the other a paused video, Duchess mid-leap, Buzz mid-fall. Outside again, Dee leaned against the front bumper. The sun was climbing, slow but unrelenting. Ghost sat by her feet, his bandaged paw now fully healed, the fur soft and silvered. He watched the lot with the calm of something that had already chosen what to fear, and discarded most of it. A small voice piped up behind her. Are those the dogs? She turned. A boy, maybe 7, stared up at her like he was unsure if he should run or salute. Dee nodded. They are. He took a cautious step closer. They're famous. They don't know that, she said, and let's keep it that way. Her phone buzzed. Zuri. Dee answered with a breath, no greeting. You've seen it, right? Zuri's voice was electric. CNN, Reddit. Even that veteran dog rescue account reposted it. You made NPR. That wasn't the goal, Dee replied. Zuri paused, then softened. I know. But it matters. Dee looked down at Ghost. His tail thumped once. It matters that they know I didn't start it. They do, Zuri said. Buzz is booked. Frank said one of the guys asked for a plea deal if he could clean kennels instead of jail time. Dee huffed a dry laugh. Might be the first honest work he's done. They stayed on the line for a few breaths more. Nothing needed filling. Zuri eventually said, I'll let you roll. Dee hung up. She reached down, brushing a hand along Ghost's head. He leaned into it, eyes half closed. They never saw the dogs, she said quietly. Just what they feared they'd lose if I didn't back down. She climbed into the cab. Duchess had already claimed her usual spot by the door, Ranger curled behind the seats, a sentinel at rest. Dee started the engine. The CB crackled. To the woman with the dogs, came a voice, gravelly, distant but warm. You've cleared the road for more than just freight. Dee smiled. Small. Private. She pressed the button. Copy that. By the time Dee pulled away from Amarillo, the dust had settled, but the echo hadn't. She didn't leave triumph behind, only proof that control could be quiet and strength didn't need to snarl. In a world too quick to judge and too slow to listen, she'd let presence, not noise, define the outcome. Justice hadn't barked. It had stood its ground, steady and unshaken. And sometimes, the sharpest lessons ride on 4 paws, and a woman who refuses to flinch.